We're going to get started here, guys. I want to say hello to everybody out there and welcome to Yakima Chief Hops Virtual Harvest. My name is Nicole Sloan and I'm the events manager here at Yakima Chief Hops. But before we get started, I just wanted to go through a few logistical things I like to go over. So let me share my screen with you all really quickly. So first of all attendees are automatically on mute to eliminate any background noise during the event, but you can always ask any questions that you have by submitting them through the Q&A or question and answer section at the bottom of your screen. We'll get to as many of those questions as we can during the scheduled session time. Also, if you see a question that has already been asked that you'd like to hear the answer to, rather than repeating it, make sure to vote, thumbs up it in the question box. The most popular questions will float to the top so that we can get them first during the Q&A. Also, please make comments throughout the event in the chat box, but just keep in mind that only questions that are in the official Q&A section will be answered at the end or throughout the session today. So if you want it answered, make sure you put it in the slide or in the question section below. If you do experience any connection or audio issues, just remember that all of these sessions are going to be recorded. And then they will be posted on virtualharvest.com after the session. So you can always go back and watch them there. So just feel free to click and watch them when they go live or when they're recorded as well. And then just a reminder for those, not everyone, you don't have to use the app, but if you're interested in using the Whova app, and especially for those in areas that do not have YouTube access to watch any some recordings, all the live sessions and pre-recordings and post-recordings will be available in the Whova app that you can must register for through the Virtual Harvest website. You'll get an access code, and then you can go in there, check out the community feeds in there, the sessions, the pre-recordings, and all of that. So we also have our speaker database and community boards. So that's it for me today. Thank you again for joining us. Our session today is the roundtable with European brewers, and it's going to be led by Jonny. So I'm going to flip it back over to you guys, and you guys can take it from there.
Thank you, Nicole, and yeah, welcome to this roundtable on European brewing. We're joined by some esteemed guests in Dennis from Yakima, we've got Henok from Omnipolo, Kevin from Basqueland, Paul Jones from Cloudwater, and JK from Upper Brewdog. Thanks for joining us today. I thought I'd perhaps start with somebody who I think is currently hopping around Europe, which is Henok. Whereabouts are you right now?
Yeah, it's a pretty weird time to be hopping around anywhere. I haven't traveled in 6 months, and I've been fortunate enough to be able to travel to Germany for 2 days. So I happen to be in a small town called Sion. We landed in Munich yesterday evening. I had a couple of beers there, and we've been. My colleague Carlos has been to a couple of hop farms, and now we're at BrewCon, a company that we've recently purchased a brewery from. So we're here to see them and have a couple of more beers.
Yeah, so that was going to be my first question. We'll start by doing a quick sort of catch up around all the different countries that we're in about the state of the European market. But Henok, you've got the most exciting news in that you have just bought a brewery and settled down after years of being a gypsy brewer.
That's right. Nice to see you, by the way. It feels like yesterday. I was going to say, since we were on a similar call. I was gonna say.
Having a virtual talk.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely the least experienced in this group. I'm super honored to be a part of this panel. These are very esteemed brewers, and we have not owned a brewery, but we've been at it for 10 years. And I think that, for us, this is definitely it's like bringing the child back into us to be able to do something like opening our own brewery. So we're very excited about that.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of the gypsy brewers of the Scandinavian nations are settling down. Is that a trend that's happening in the market?
Yeah, I would say, just by seeing my kind of colleague contract brewers, if you will, out there, definitely that's something that's been happening. I think we're kind of the last ones out. Mikko has done that move, Tuval, obviously, and a couple of others, Jeppe, an Evil Twin in the US as well. I think it's I think for sure you're absolutely right. It is a trend in that respect.
And you're hoping, is there going to be more control over the product and the ingredients that are coming through there? Is that part of the move?
That's what we're dreaming about. And I think talking about hops or any other kind of, I mean, so we've been a contract brewer for 10 years. And I think that having, you kind of play off each individual strength. And I think that our strength has been kind of super expressive, quirky beers. I think that what we are enjoying the most is to be able to go into the subtleties of the styles. And I think that to do that all the way, having your own brewery is kind of crucial.
Kevin, moving over to Spain. It feels like you guys had quite a hard lockdown over the last couple of months. How's business been doing in Spain, and how's the export market been, which I know is important for Spanish brewers?
Well, knock on wood for us, we've been fortunate enough to be sending out pallets out throughout Spain, as well as up to the UK, France, etc., you name it. So that's been pretty great. Here locally, it's been summer. People were under confinement and on lockdown pretty much from mid-March through early June, late May. And so people did get out. They were taking full advantage of being out prior to school, prior to the kids are going back next week. So I mentioned that. Prior to coming back to work, and just trying to take advantage of any tourism coming in, meaning the bars and the restaurants, they really rely on the summer months to flourish and pretty much to break even or turn a profit throughout the year. And so the numbers just came out here in Gipuzkoa, where we are in the Basque Country, and occupancy was at 50% in the hotels. So it was a little bit of a rough summer. The bars and restaurants, those owners, they're really on the front lines and taking it on the chin. In the sense of somebody gets infected, of course, you need to shut down. But a lot of other businesses are not subject to the same rules and regulations. So hats off to them. We're doing all we can to help them out. And that includes just making it the best beer we can, turning it out, getting it out the door to them, new beers to try to bring consumers into their place. So really, all in all, we've been fortunate enough to have a pretty good summer. And I hope the rest of the panel here has been as fortunate as us.
Have you adapted what you were brewing at all to that market, or is there any adaptations you'll make going forward as a result to the actual beers, the styles you're making?
The quick answer to that is no. We haven't changed anything. Right when the lockdown came, we were not sure if we were going to be able to even get to our brewery. So we had to get we were very careful to, get beers off yeast, do some trub dumps, get the beers in a state where they can just kind of rest in case we could not get back into the brewery. So after that, we did some soul searching. Pretty much got every single person that we do business with on the phone and said, hey, this is what we're thinking of doing. How do you feel about that? And everybody was just like, yeah, let's just business as usual with regards to the styles until we see that coin flip and where we have to make something else. But as of right now, we're still doing the DDH beers. We're still doing double IPAs, triple IPAs, really hoppy beers, and they're flying. So and I think that's a testament to, just the quality of the beer, but also that the consumer, let's say we did soul searching with our business. I think a lot of people say, you know what, if I'm going to enjoy a beer, I really want to taste great. And I'm not going to mess around with having anything mediocre or less than that. Even if, if you're going to pay $6 for 440 a double IPA rather than $2 for industrial lager, you're going to get 10 times or 20 times the amount of enjoyment from it. So I think that's been a key goal for our consumers.
Paul from Manchester, England, Cloudwater.
Hey.
It feels like years ago now, but I watched you, Cloudwater, doing a stream in which you sent out a lot of lager to your customers via your web shop and some of us beer writers, and thoroughly enjoyed a stream where we nerded out about lager. Has that been a style that you've been focusing on in the last couple of months? I know it's something you've been passionate about for a while.
Yeah, so when we went into lockdown here, we really hit the gas on trying to not just distribute through our own online shop, business to consumer, but we did everything that we possibly could to draw awareness to craft beer, to draw awareness to us as a brewery. We managed to grow our customer base 5 times throughout lockdown. And a lot of those customers are people that are new to craft beer, and some of them are even new to beer full stop. So we've definitely found the more kind of everyday drinking beers become more and more popular. I think that that's something that we're looking forward to continuing, because as much as the heart and soul of this brewery is one-off beers and seasonal focus beers, it is really thrilling to be able to make Helles or a light lager. I mean, we have a number of seasonal lagers coming through production right now into package. So we've got this wonderful array of lager beers, and it's really cool to know that whilst part of the consumer base continues to just obsess over having a mouthful of each thing once, there's another part of the consumer base that's really, really excited to get a delicious beer that's just as delicious this time as it was last and the past 10 times before then. So it's pretty cool seeing that love rise up throughout the UK for lager beer, for sure.
And JK, I'd be really interested to hear. I mean, BrewDog is probably the biggest player on this. You know, what's been happening up in terms of product development when the market is huge and it's hard to come by.
Sorry, you're cutting out there. Say again.
I was saying I was hoping to hear what BrewDog have been doing in terms of new product development during the last couple of months when, you know, the bars have been closed and maybe you haven't had the opportunity to get the feedback you once did.
Well, I sort of started 23rd of March. I came up to Ellen, and then we were locked down on the 24th. So it was I had nothing to do for 3.5 months but come up with new beers. And luckily, I mean, it doesn't. What we do here is not dependent entirely on the bars, and we've got a good set of people here that know what good beer is and know what we need to be brewing. So it's been really full steam ahead with R&D and MPD. So we've done a lot of new beers, and some then we were able to release into the bars, and some have gone into independent stores and online and things like that. So that's been pretty successful as well.
And have you still seen, I presume, like the flagships like Punk must have been flying out at the same time? The brewery must have been.
Yeah. Same position as Paul, I think. I mean, I don't know about everyone else, but I drank a hell of a lot during lockdown, and we've got a lot of new customers to good beer. A lot of people, you know, going to the supermarket and wanting to get something to do on the weekend. I certainly did. So yeah, it was pretty good. We did okay. Kept afloat. It was pretty tough, obviously, because we've had a lot of people furlough, but a lot of the staff, you know, stepped up and kept things running, which was great.
It was interesting what you said. Do you think that the last couple of months has brought in a lot of new drinkers to the category in Europe?
I think so, yeah. I think so, definitely. I think a lot of new customers. A lot of people coming in saying, "Well, what's going on with this beer? It's hazy," and I can only assume they've never had a hazy beer before to be complaining about a beer called Hazy Jane that says it's hazy.
So slightly on the note of new product development, Dennis, it would be great to hear first from you, and then we'll go around the rest of the table about what new varieties or innovations in hop growing has been exciting you that we might be seeing in Europe soon.
Well, I mean, you know, not to use this agenda as a product launch or anything, but I mean, we just had a new variety come out last week, and Kevin has a beer right there used with that hop called Talus, which is HBC 692, which is full on kind of Sabro and Simcoe on steroids, if you would, but huge flavor, huge aroma, and we're really excited about that hop right now, and also excited about some of the new products. I mean, the continued products we have in our portfolio with certainly with Cryo. You know, Cryo's been, especially with this hazy trend that's been going on with lots big flavors, soft flavors, Cryo has been really, really helpful for us and for the industry. So no, a lot of fun things happening right now, and of course new varieties on the way as well.
Kevin, seeing as you have brewed a beer with that, tell us a bit about that hop and any other developments that you've been making recently.
Well, we're first of all, thanks so much, guys, for including us in the launch and getting us to Talus. It's really cool. We have been brewing it while using the HPC 692 experimental, but prior to the naming of it, in several beers, and it works in really nice, easy drinking session IPAs we're doing up to double IPAs. This one, the Talus, which literally canned this morning, and I'm super psyched by it, because when it came off the line, I was getting some really good like bergamot and like sandalwood. I felt like I was at a spa with Paul rubbing my feet. It was great. It was just like beautiful and delicious, and we're psyched to get that out on the market as quickly as possible. With regards to just other stuff we're doing, I mean, I fall very much in line with what Paul's doing. You know, we don't just focus on like the super hoppy stuff. We also do like that light lager stuff and our Santa Clara Helles lager, and that really opens the door for people to come in and try like our Sub Rosa, which was almost pretty much a Sabro dominated session IPA, or like and they're graduating up quickly. The learning curve is so steep to trying double dry hops and DIPAs. So and it's across the board, down from the youngsters up to people in their mid 50s. So we love to see how the learning curve developing, how the market loves these beers, and you know, keep up the good work, guys. Great.
JK, based off of what Kevin just said, I'm really interested to know how IPA is obviously done extremely well during lockdown, but there was always this hint of, you know, a West Coast revival. Has Brewdog seen that in its sales or in its brewing volumes, or is it still haze for days?
Yeah, man, absolutely. I mean, we've done double punk, jackhammers in 440s now, which is great. Our Modern Times collab's really good, which is West Coast. I've just done Jagged Edge, which is like a baby jackhammer, so it's 5.2. It's lovely. So a lot of love for that, but still loads of love for the hazies.
Mm-hmm.
I've
Paul,
never brewed so many hazies, to be honest.
Sorry, say that again, JK.
I've never brewed so many hazies.
Paul, have you seen that? I know you've been releasing a couple of West Coast IPAs of late. Is that you trying to drag the consumer with you, or is that you responding to a demand that's there?
No, there's a lot of segmentation in the marketplace. I mean, I know that we all see, you know, the sort of wave of craft consumer that came in 10 years ago or more has a real affiliation with the styles that were on, you know, very much of that time and place. We love making those styles of beers, and it feels right to keep looping back around. West Coast IPAs, from my point of view, are one of the hardest beer styles to nail. I mean, lager brewing and getting your beer close to a traditional flavor profile aside, to achieve the right balance of real fresh, forward hopping, getting that balance right where you're not over bittering West Coast IPA, because that's definitely something that's a European trend and not particularly what I have ever found in the 75 breweries I've visited on the West Coast. But getting that kind of balance right is so intense, and so part of why we brew West Coast IPA is it's pretty straightforward to get hold of good quality West Coast IPA flown in from the States, and it travels quite well. So you can generally get hold of an experience that's comparable to a draft beer experience, enough for you to really, you know, put yourself out there. I mean, we love drinking our beer alongside the beers that we really look up to, and that's something that we feel, especially when it comes to West Coast IPA, we're very much able to do that. and also pull samples in, and really embark on that technical challenge of how you build hop flavor when you're not necessarily doing that on top of really aromatic yeast, and you're wanting to be sensitive to, you know, how much fruit character you pull through, how much of that kind of piney, resinous, pithy sort of character you pull through the hops, and just that whole layering exercise is still something that is quite foreign to us. So I still feel like we've got a long way to go before we match the quality of beer that I experience from Sierra Nevada or from Russian River or from Pizza Port, to name but 3 breweries that we look up to a lot. So it's, you know, brewing that style for us is just another one of those technical challenges that we do. So it's not really, we have this sort of distinction in what we produce. A lot of what we produce is very much what the customer is demanding from us, and we love to do that. You know, we work in that overlap and feel very good about it. But West Coast IPA, no one's really asking for that. At least not so many of the kind of new wave consumers. But you know, put that beer in front of the right group of people that have an affiliation with IPA in that style, and folk absolutely love it, and they go crazy that it's still around and still lives.
When you're looking to produce West Coast IPAs, are you looking back at, you know, hops that have maybe fallen out of fashion a little bit as well, or are you introducing those sort of juicier hops into that flavor profile?
No, so like one of the things that we're really keen to do is be sensitive to what the style is, and not just mindlessly or carelessly mess with the parameters within a particular style, especially if it's something that we haven't developed. I mean, you know, I'm going to show you, like, I've got a can here of this double Hopfenweiss, and we love to brew a beer like this. We feel like we can do whatever we want in this style, because that's something that we almost do exclusively in Europe. But when it comes to West Coast IPA, that's not a style that we've done any pioneering work in. It's not a style that was defined by any of our efforts. And so we feel very much like keep tapping up folks we look up to on the West Coast, getting their advice, trying to take their sensibilities into account. So, you know, we're blessed by being able to reach out to phenomenal folks like Jeff Bagby, pick his brains. And, you know, we love making sure that Columbus forms, you know, part of our hop grist in a West Coast IPA. We love making sure that, you know, we're not overlooking Centennial. And Centennial's, you know, not that much, it's not a dusty hop by any stretch of the imagination, but it's still a little bit out of favor next to some of the sort of newer varietals. So I think you can't honestly get the right the true to style flavor profile in a West Coast IPA without also using hops that kind of came of age when West Coast IPA came of age. So I think that that's something that we feel pretty committed to. Now, you know, if we ever feel like we produce a West Coast IPA or pale ale, if we feel like we ever do that and genuinely hit the profile that we're going for, then we might decide to give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room and see what we can do with modern hops. But we generally don't we don't allow ourselves innovation space until we feel like we've got, you know, 95% of the way there to representing that style as it's intended to be. And we feel like we're a long way off with West Coast. So, you know, we'll kind of leave the innovation aside and just keep coming back to those classic hop varietals and trying to learn how to get the most out of them. And, you know, in many ways, hop utilization becomes something that's defined by the varietal's features. So, you know, if you're using a hop, I mean, our experience, for example, with Columbus is that it can be quite prone, not necessarily the varietal, but maybe how it's handled, where it is in the pecking order. You know, it can come to you with quite a lot of allium notes. And so therefore it benefits from hot side additions, it benefits from additions during fermentation. And you've got to be quite careful with it post fermentation in the dry hop. So that's something that, you know, it starts to make sense why you talk to people like Jeff Bagby, you do your reading and you peer into the sort of recipe books of classic West Coast IPAs, and you find that's maybe why there's like 20 bloody hop additions. You know, and a lot of them are being made, you know, from first wort all the way through to maybe a couple in bright, but you know, so many layers built up through brewing and then fermentation, and you think, well, maybe the hop varietals themselves were part of what caused brewers to utilize the hops in that particular way to get the most out of their aroma value and get the least out of maybe the bits that they weren't super keen on.
Henok, talking of innovation, I think on Apollo probably at the very top of that. What have you seen in terms of real new product innovation? I hesitate to raise the specter of hard seltzer, but what stuff have you seen happening in that more experimental space that you guys like to inhabit?
Well, first of all, I guess, you know, just hearing Paul talk about like humbly approaching a West Coast IPA, I think is super inspiring. I think that's awesome. And I think that what's happening in Europe, going back to like trends and what have you, like being able to produce really good hoppy beers is something that Europe is yet to experience all the way. I think that like the bar is being raised for every day that passes, and I think that craft beer's been introduced for sure, like craft beer 2.0. And what's happening now is like people are really becoming knowledgeable about what they're drinking. So that's kudos. Like that's an awesome way to approach it. And I think that, you know, if we could do that with every style that we have no clue of how to brew, which is the case of every style for us, like, yeah, I'll be happy. But regarding like more crazy beers, because I guess I kind of represent that in a way, you know, the hard seltzer trend, I think like that's like, we need like, there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen there. I think that Europe will approach it very differently from the US. That's just my feeling. I think that we will, as with a lot of other trends that have come into the craft beer scene the past couple of years, like we will enter at a different level, but also maybe take it in another direction simply because of social media or because people travel, not so much anymore, but like we will have a different approach to it. Like we've approached, like one thing I've been trying to wrap my head around, just staying on the seltzer track for a while, is that we come into it with the same kind of, you know, expressive mindset that we usually do when we produce beers, and we say, hey, let's brew this crazy seltzer or whatever it is. And what happens when people buy this beer and look at what's happening in the US, it's like, well, how many calories does this thing have? And, you know, I haven't discussed calorie content of any beverage that we've produced for the past 10 years, you know? And so it's kind of a weird way to approach it for us. And I think flavor will be kind of the driving factor behind whether this becomes a you know, craft beer drinker choice or, you know, crafty choice at all, more than, you know, the calorie intake. So it's a weird like parallel thing going on there. I think we're approaching it in a quite awkward way in Europe because we don't know how it's being consumed. But I think there's a lot of exciting things. I mean, we have 3 seltzer collaborations with American brewers going on. I mean, that's pretty crazy at this point. And, you know, I've made 2 or 3 at this point, but so let's see where we go with that. Other than that, again, I think being a European brewer, it goes back very much to trying really to dig deep into what these driving factors behind using hops in the right way, but also being able to experiment with it and getting nuances out. It's like going to be this thing that goes on for the next, you know, couple of years here, rather than just keep on adding more ingredients or similar. So I guess that kind of like provides some of the answers of where we're going anyway. But yeah.
When we spoke a couple of months ago, and you gave a digital tour of the Church of Omnipollo, and you said you were hoping to get into lagers and styles like that. What's going to be the approach for Omnipollo to speak to its customer base, which is probably more used to those crazy stuff, when you're saying, you know, we want to make a classic Helles or something like that?
That's a really interesting question. And I think that for us, it's always been about trying to create a relevance to maybe like non-craft beer drinkers as well. Like we try to be as inclusive as we can at our whether it's our tap rooms or whether it's what we brew. Like we don't want to exclude people from what we do. And I think that kind of ethos has to run through how we approach these other styles. I mean, we drink other styles and we enjoy them a lot. You know, we're not going to go out like the way that Paul just talked about West Coast IPAs again, which I think is very inspiring, is kind of how we're approaching trying to approach every style. I mean, you know, I'm in Bavaria now, like drinking Pilsner beer, like that's better than any Pilsner beer I've ever brewed. And I'm very aware of that, but that's how everything starts. I think stouts, imperial stouts, for example, when we started out was, you know, I came into this as a home brewer and I never brewed a good imperial stout in my entire life. Today, I think that's probably the style that we're the most like acknowledged for. And I think that by approaching it in a very humble way, like beautiful things can happen. So let's hope for that too.
Kevin, I think maybe Spain is seen as quite a young market, which I don't think is fair at all anymore. But I was wondering, do you see any requirement for brewers to be brewing varied styles, to be bringing back bitterness and trying to keep the styles that are coming out varied so that we can keep drinkers not just interested, but also, you know, engaged and learning the whole time? Is that a responsibility of the brewer? Oh, you're still muted, Kevin.
It's absolutely the responsibility of the brewer. Now, the thing is, like, it's interesting to hear you guys say this because we completely backed in the opposite way into IPAs here and opening our brewery. So we opened 5 years ago, and from day one, our number one style until through today is our West Coast IPA, made with Simcoe, Mosaic, and Citra. So, but we had a little ace in our back pocket, which was our founding brewer, who worked at Pizza Port and Stone from San Diego. So he was out here and we started making that, and people were like, what the hell is this? And they didn't have a choice at that point in time because there really wasn't a whole lot of market, I would say penetration, not using like a big term like that, but just there wasn't enough of good any beer around, let alone you know, your Cloudwaters. You know, Brewdog was really the tip of the sword that opened up the market with their Punk IPA and had a lot of taps on. People were like, well, what is this? And ours, different style, but it went in and it's 62 EBUs, you know, versus like what some of our East Coast stuff that's like 20, 25 EBUs. So that was just a clobber on the head to our local consumer, and they've never let it go. But the difference is, and really what follows suit in, say, in the United States back in the early 90s or the UK 10 years ago or 15 years ago is IPA super fast has just become a staple. It's something that the craft beer geeks and the neophytes to craft beer have in their fridge already, and now they're looking kind of past that, but it's a staple for them already. So yes, it's important for us to educate. We're seeing now that learning curve accelerate with regards to sour beers. And for me, I think I can look around this panel. I don't want to speak for everybody, but for me, the different styles we make, everything from a mixed fermentation, wild ales to IPAs to house lagers, and the IPAs West Coast or East Coast there's a different beer for. When are you drinking? Is it earlier in the day? Is it mid-evening? Is it dinner? What type of friends are you with? Is this a sessional experience? Or are you just drinking one? And you really have every different flavor for every different moment of the day, and that's the beauty of craft beer.
Paul, I think in the UK we've had a real switch up in terms of the amount of mixed fermentation experimentation going on, and there's tens, maybe hundreds of breweries now that have mixed fermentation barrel programs, have installed cool ships and that kind of thing. You're a well-traveled man. how's the European farmhouse brewing scene compared in terms of quality and in terms of its rise? Is it doing well in the market and growing?
I think in terms of quality, there's not much in the newest farmhouse beers that we can sample in the UK, and plenty of the offerings in the US. But I would say both are still behind what's happening in Belgium. I'd say that there is a maturity to the European market in terms of those spontaneous beers, but I think that there's something exciting and playful and innovative happening in both the US market and the UK market. I think we're seeing a lot of experimentation with some really bloody innovative ingredients. I know that my pal down in Norfolk, Bates at Duration, he's working a lot with root vegetables, which I think is fucking nuts, but also wonderful. And we can go to Scratch and Fonta Flora and Jester King and many other breweries in the States and look at what is being done there. Trillium are growing their own farm-based produce to use in their own beers. There's a lot that's going to come through those mixed fermentation stroke farmhouse style beers that I think is going to take the whole beer market and the beer consumer's journey in plenty of other directions, other than just that kind of short form. Got to try it once. Maybe it's just I love the fact that a lot of these beers come in 750ml bottles, and that's how they're packaged and bought. I think it starts to encourage consumers to either come together over a bottle or take your time through it, savor that experience, go through that journey, all those depths of flavor. And so I like to think that the real advantage mixed fermentation beer is going to continue to sort of create for brewers that either make that style or don't, is just this kind of diversification of interests and appreciation for different flavor combinations. I think the UK scene in terms of its mixed firm work it's in an exciting place. We see around us definitely some really exciting offerings. I think it's wonderful to see consumers become really enthusiastic about the quality of those offerings. And time will tell, whether we're able to reimagine, what really old British beer would have tasted like before everything sort of cleaned up and went very sack driven. Most British beer would have had a very, very strong Brettanomyces character. So I'm really excited to see in these next couple of years, what happens to reimagine really, really old English beer, but in a very, very modern setting. And I think that's a lot of the farmhouse work that's being done right now. It's probably already exhibiting qualities of that. We'll just see where it gets to. But it's fundamentally just lovely to see that diversification continue to happen. It's really wonderful to see breweries focus completely or with a high degree of specificity on that particular kind of family of beers, because the best work tends to happen when you're not distracted by all of these different sort of competing ideas from different styles. So we definitely love seeing pals of ours here in the UK continue to sort of push on and try and find some kind of, what is, I mean, no one's apart. Maybe it's true for a very small handful of breweries that are actually in old farm buildings. But let's reimagine what farmhouse brewing actually can be here in the UK. Figure out what we can bring to that whole framework from this soil, from what terroir can we express. It's going to be really exciting. It's So I think we're in a wonderful time already with some great beers, but I'm just really excited about the next 2, 3, 4 years. I mean, farmhouse beers take so long to produce to a really high quality that I think we're the great work that was done this year alone is going to take between 1 and 3 years to manifest. So it's definitely a patient game waiting for everyone to sort of come of age, but it's happening already. There's some great beers, and I know that a lot of consumers share my enthusiasm for what's to come.
Obviously, Brewdog have what must be the biggest mixed fermentation brewery in the country, and that was probably a big risk back when it opened. We've seen lots of delicious beers coming out of Overworks, but is there more stuff planned, and how's the response been to those Overworks beers amongst the Brewdog obsessives?
I don't know. I have nothing to do with it, mate.
I mean, it's separate brewing and everything, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it is my favourite thing to brew, that and lager. So, I mean, when I'm finished at work, I go home, do a bit of home brew, which is always going to be mixed ferm. But, I mean, I talked to Richard a lot. Seems to go pretty well. Beers are tasting good. I mean, it's a massive facility. It's really, really amazing. Wish I could get over there a bit more and muck about, but I'm busy. EPD, NPD, R&D. That's my bag.
All the acronyms. I'll put a different question to you then, which is going back to being a bit more hop focused. In that we've talked about the idea of trying to push consumers to try new things, to try new styles, and that might be the responsibility of the brewer. One thing that brewers have started doing, and I think Brewdog actually moved away from doing, I remember when Brewdog used to release a 4-pack of 4 different hops with the same recipe underneath. And I feel like brewers increasingly are using these hops as almost marketing terms on the can. I wondered what your feelings were on that, and whether you had any insight into why Brewdog moved away from it and why everyone else moved towards it.
I don't really know why we moved. I mean, I can postulate we probably moved away from it because we brew a lot of beer now, and it's additional SKUs are tricky. So from that point of view, it's easier not to do it. From a marketing point of view, I think it works very well, for sure. I mean, for example, the HBC 692, I've been using it for a while. We just haven't told anyone about it, and I've been popping it in things and using it as a kind of a lifter hop, as I like to call it. But advertising it would. I mean, to be honest, it didn't have a name at the time, but it is in beers that we do produce because it works really well in conjunction with other hops, and that's the way I sort of look at it. But I think definitely works. It would be handy if we could do that. It's certainly if I'm out shopping, I'm gonna pick up something that I don't know about, try that beer because of a hop name on it that I'm not familiar with, for sure.
Kevin, how is that a thing that you're seeing in the Spanish market? Oh, you're muted again. Sorry, Kevin.
There we go. Technology. It's that same thing. Like, the consumer has been learning so quickly and adapting to these flavor profiles so quickly, and eagerly awaiting new releases and seeing the different hop combinations we do, or the monovarietal stuff, to really get to know a hop. We have so many people that are coming in being like, I'm a home brewer. Where can we find these? And it's just like, was a big wine culture. The wine, just like grapes from different terroir, you have the hops from different terroir, from Yakima, that come up with they could be dank and super West Coast in that style, or super juicy and citrusy. So they love seeing what we do with regards to the different hop combinations. And I really think, what we've done with we call it Mucho Talus, which is just the monovarietal of Talus that we're doing, for people really get to learn what that hop's all about, what it's capable of.
Henok, I'm interested in your view on this, because I think one of the things that Omnipollo do so well, both in the beers that they make and the way that they present them online, is by talking about the very specific flavors that you're going to get, whether it's an ingredient in the beer or not. Do you ever use hop names as sort of a shortcut to the flavors that people can expect?
We do that now for sure. I mean, there were a couple of years where that kind of felt like it was almost too niche. We would always mention the hops, but I mean, I think there are a couple of hop varieties that just, help us communicate what it is that we're trying to convey with the beer very easily. To the extent where that might be the entire idea behind the beer. And I think that the consumer is much more knowledgeable these days about what goes in there. And besides, I think it looks good. You add the name of a hop and it's sexy instantly.
So you're relying on hop farmers.
What I love about it is that as a pretty adjunct heavy brewery, like these hop varieties or focusing on the hops can actually help us focus on something else. Like we can brew with hops, yeast, malt, and water, and kind of focus on the hops as the reason for being, which I think is incredible. Like we wouldn't very, very rarely focus on the malts. It happens, or any other ingredients in the beer. Your yeast, fine, but hops definitely takes that sex appeal to another level for sure.
Paul, I feel like you used to put almost the full sort of recipe on the back with the hops, and now have you shifted the hops to the front, so they're front and center, and then you do tasting notes on the back? Is that where Cloudwater are at right now?
Yeah, pretty much. So we felt like we were not being so helpful to some of the breweries around us by putting an exhaustive list of ingredients, because with the particular lots that we would use, or the combination of ingredients might vary by their ratio from batch to batch. So we felt like we weren't really assisting at one point in time by being exhaustive with that ingredients list. But now, sure, we just went through, I think I'm right in saying 15 different single hopped IPAs through spring and early summer this year. And that's something that we love to do as much as we can. We're looking forward to getting our NZ hops through soon. We'll be doing the same kind of focus there. It's certainly putting the name of the hops on the front. I mean, it gives people some chance to know what they're getting. I have to say, I've had the real luxury of being able to go to Yakima for the past few years and select our hops. And so we don't always choose a lot that is the most typical or the most expressive of what that varietal has been for years and years. We might choose something a little bit off the wall. And so in some senses, we start to feel a little bit like maybe we're underserving the potential of the lots that we're using by just putting the name of the hop on the front. Because, the Simcoe, for example, that we get to select with YCH is incredible, but it's not your most quintessential Simcoe experience. We that's why we tend to go with the name of the hop, and then we'll also pull out some tasting notes. Both Adam and Connor here are absolutely fantastic and really quite specific with the tasting notes that they like to pull through and put on the can there. And we love to ride with that, because I think it gives people the chance to get into that particular beer and see what they find. And we're always hoping through doing that, name of the hop on the front and a bit of tasting notes on the back, we're hoping that that's encouraging people to jump in and go through a bit of a sort of tasting experience, a bit of sensory analysis themselves.
Dennis, I'd love to hear your views on the use of what are essentially your brands on the front of these things, and how it helps the consumer and how it feels.
Yeah, I'll start off by saying I'm glad Paul just mentioned that. I mean, I met Paul out at Selection last year, and what he said is absolutely true. Selection is not about picking the best hops; it's about picking the right hops for you. And you'd be surprised when you have 9 different lots of Simcoe on a table, what lot a brewer would choose. You'd think it would be A or B, but in fact, they're in love with D, and that's what fits their beer. So I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm actually drinking right now. I don't know if you can see this, probably not. It's the Duvel triple hop with Citra, right? And this is our go-to here in Belgium. You know, Duvel's done a series of single hop beers with us for about 7 or 8 years, going through Equinaut and Mosaic and Amarillo, Sriracha Ace, and they finally settled on Citra, and it's a delicious beer. It works well with the Duvel style and the yeast they use, and it's a pleasure to see it in the store. And people do recognize it. So people that maybe know Duvel, when you say Duvel Citra, they automatically recognize it. Oh yeah, I know that beer. So for us to have it, or you know, for us to be represented on the label, it's an honor. And I remember, you know, when Duvel did a Mosaic single hop, we sent it back to our breeder, Jason Peralta in the U.S., and I think he almost cried. I mean, he was the one who came up with Mosaic at the time, and to have that on a label here in Europe was fabulous. But I think it helps promote the hops. It gives a consumer awareness. And I think, as Kevin pointed out, yeah, we might be going down a road where people then recognize Citra as they recognize Chardonnay or they recognize Syrah. And I think it's just going to help the consumer, educate the consumer more on the variety and the flavors.
So we've had a couple of questions come in the Q&A and also in advance that are sort of skirted around this. But I was wondering if anybody on the panel had any thoughts on the use of American hops in, should we say, like traditional native beer styles from Europe, whether it be, you know, German, Belgian, like we have in there, or in British brewing. Have you seen or rather tasted any really great examples of American hops being used in traditional European styles? I guess put your hand up and we'll unmute you if we have to. All right, Kevin.
Well, we were luckily invited several years ago to the London Craft Beer Festival before we were known even in our own little circle. And, you know, it's not just self-serving, but we had made a lager called the Long Ball Larry Simcoe Lager. And it was with Yakima Chief Simcoe with Mexican lager yeast to make this beer. And it was kind of, maybe it was lip service because people felt bad for us because we had no marketing budget. Our bars looked like crap, and they were coming up. But the brewers kept coming up and drinking this beer, and they really gave us confidence. It was just this like really super, like almost chewy lager because of the Mexican yeast, and the Simcoe just really rounded it out. And it was that, and kind of just kind of goes back to one other thing that I really missed, just want to say it, are the collabs, because we missed doing we learned so much from brewing with the likes of Paul or you know, the guys like around across the board, Northern Monk or whoever, and these guys are just showcasing the best of the best. So I want to add that.
Anybody else? Not a problem. So, JK, I've got a question for you. You've had a pretty long and illustrious career in British brewing now. And I wondered, to start to bring this panel to a close, what it is that you look for in a hop supplier, and if you had any tips for people who are out there looking for suppliers and choosing their hops.
Oh, mate, it's been a long road, and it's been a long road of crappy hops. So I'm so happy now because I get to play with stuff. There's, you know, new varieties I can try. There's the bangers I finally get to use. I mean, for a long time, a lot of the places I was working, which is quite educational, because what I had to do was get the most out of what I had via combination a lot of the time. So it's probably now I'm a bit lazy because I just go to the fridge and get what I want. But it's also given me a sort of a long education in how to make hop combinations that are greater than the sum of their parts. I can't remember what your question was. Well, what's good with the hop supplier is get the hops I want. and getting the quality I want, which is great. I mean, there's nothing worse than opening a bag and it smells like one of my least favorite aromas is linseed. Putty as an oxidative off aroma is disgusting. So getting quality hops that I know I'm going to open a bag and it's going to smell good. That's one of the greatest things. And getting the varieties I really want.
Paul, you've been I think experimenting with different hops, different lots, and was there some British Cascade in one of your IPAs recently?
Yeah, we've recently used a bunch of Jester, and that's something that we're definitely excited to talk to British hop growers and see what we can do to sort of kindle their love for something bold and aromatic. I mean, you've got to bear in mind if you go to Harvey's Brewery, and they're a cool brewery who are doing weird things with beer lobbying right now, but their hops sit in a bale in their attic for a year to sort of lose some of their aromatics because they're a bit too bold when they come in. If that's your sort of typical buyer, and they're not atypical really in that field, you're not necessarily going to be pushing as hard as the growers in Yakima Valley are. I just wanted to add to something that JK said. I mean, obviously opening a bag of hops and getting that like burst of intensely fresh aroma hit you is incredible. My favorite thing with working with Yakima Chief is not just getting to go to origin and select the lots. That's really, really important to me because of what I think that can bring to our consumers, but being able to get insight into the operational constraints to meet the producers, to go to Perrault, to talk carpenter, to meet the folk with their boots on the ground, and get into why they work the way that they do, what their concerns are, what they need. This is something that I think Yakima Chief makes very, very straightforward, certainly for brewers like me that go year on year. And I really love that because, I recognize our role as this sort of, factory that transforms agricultural products into consumable good. And I really want to make sure that we never lose touch in what's happening in the fields, what's happening in the farms. And I think the Yakima Chief makes it really straightforward for us to not just deepen our relationship with with the kind of sensory end that really concerns consumers downstream, but also with the very real kind of like human end of that whole agricultural side to what beer is. And it's really, really important, I think, that we get to learn as time goes by more about what growers are faced with, what challenges they're faced with, how we can help them direct their energies so that what they're putting in the ground and how they're thinking about what they're growing really becomes something that we just absolutely rip through, because consumers are delighted by it. So I love the fact that we have this opportunity to deepen relationships, to have conversations that hopefully over the years will continue to bring all of us from grower to consumer onto the same page and all really engaged in doing something that's really joined up and really celebrated all the way throughout the chain. It's something really cool that I think Yakima Chief does.
Henok, I'm super interested in how a relationship with a hop grower or supplier works when you're contracting your brews. And are you hoping it will change, or that it will stay the same once you have your own site?
No, we're absolutely hoping it would change. That's why we're sitting here. It's been a quite detached process for us. It's been more conceptual with beer than practical and hands-on. And I think that we're kind of making that journey as a brewery. And I think just generally it's just talking about focusing on hops. To me personally, less is more. Like, I never use more than 1 or 2 hops in a beer as it is. And I'd love to just use 1. Any surplus usage, like 3 or 4 or 5, is simply connected to what we can get a hold of. And I think that the better the hops we can get, the less we're going to be using in terms of varieties. And the dream would absolutely be to kind of deep dive with Yakima and you know, other hop growers that are willing to work with us. And so that's why I kind of said that right when we kicked this off, we're the rookie in the room. And so it's amazing to be included in this group. And for sure, going forward, I think that, you know, even as a European brewer, I'm eager and excited to be able to like do more in that area, because I think that, you know, people travel to the US and to other regions to get to experience the real top shelf stuff. And there's no reason it should be that way going forward.
And Kevin, the original question to you about, you know, what do you look for in a hop grower, and what's impressed you with those that you've worked with?
Well, you know, I've used, got Dennis sitting there, so I'll use him as an example. You know, to echo everybody's comments with regards to quality, I mean, it's obvious. We're all using the hops. They're great. We all know that. But honestly, like 5 years ago, when we had literally nothing, we didn't even have a space yet. We went to Nuremberg to Braubeviale, which is like the equivalent of the CBC in States, and you know, walked up and met Dennis, and we were nobody, and he sit there and took us through the different hops, what it will look like this year, the following year, all the way through now. We weren't able to contract then because we didn't even know if we make it past the first couple of years. But it really comes down to the people. Paul mentioned it, getting to go meet the growers, seeing who's behind it, knowing that when we write an email or make a phone call, or if we're in dire straits for any reason, somebody's got our back. And so that's just been, I know it's not hokey, but I really appreciated all that customer service, even when we were fledgling, wet behind the ears, just trying to get it going. It really made a difference. And I would say, if anybody takes if there's any like new brewers out there or thinking about taking up the mantle with regards to a new craft brewery in your local market, I mean, that's who you got to look for, somebody who's going to get your back.
Okay, well, that's all the questions that I had for this session. We've just run over, so we've just about nailed it. I think any questions that we didn't get to in the Q&A section are going to be answered offline, I believe. So do hang tight onto that. But otherwise, thank you so much, guys, for taking some time and chatting to us. And thanks so much for all the delicious beer that you make. And thank you for coming along, Dennis, as well, and for all the support you've clearly given these guys.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you guys again so much. Before we let everybody go, I just want to, again, a huge thank you to all the panelists that were on today. So we really appreciate your time that you've given to us today. And I just also want to remind everybody that was attending that we have recorded this session, and it will be available online to watch later at virtualharvest.com. So we'll just kind of go to that session and you can watch the recording. And again, thank you so much for joining us on our first ever virtual harvest session. We hope to see you on the next one shortly. Otherwise, everyone have a great rest of your day. Cheers.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
All right.